Is Reed Sheppard the Houston Rockets' best option at starting point guard? How necessary is a leap from Stephon Castle for the San Antonio Spurs' success? And what can we expect this year from rising sophomores Matas Buzelis and Zaccharie Risacher of the Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks, respectively? All that and more coming up on this edition of the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings your first listen of the day. My name is Nathan Grubel, current No Ceilings contributor, scouting consultant, evaluator of prospects over the last 14 years. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network and are available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel.com app to get started. Joining me this week is my co-host, lead columnist, and creator of the No Stone Unturned series for No Ceilings. It's Maxwell Baumbach. Maxwell, how are we doing today?
I am fired up to talk NBA sophomores. What a fascinating draft the 2024 draft was. It made us all think ourselves into circles, and I feel like we're still doing that with a number of the top players in that class. They're all in fascinating situations and trajectories, at least the players we're talking about today, and I cannot wait to get into it.
You and I, as well as everyone else in No Ceilings, have discussed multiple times that when you get a weird draft class like 2024, it challenges you as an evaluator, and in a lot of ways, it's actually a good thing. And now we really get to look at some of the early returns on what our evaluations were and really start to piece together who are the guys who are going to become impact players moving forward, who are the guys that are going to make leaps, where can we see some of the top players in particular settling with their teams. And that's what we're doing on today's episode. Maxwell and I, we're going to continue our 2025-26 NBA preview series, looking at the league's top young players. We're moving into the sophomore class. Let's take a look at Reed Sheppard's projected role with the Houston Rockets this season, how Stephon Castle can impact the success of the San Antonio Spurs, and what to expect from some rising sophomores in Matas Buzelis, Zaccharie Risacher, and if time's permitting, may throw in one more name at the end who's had me really intrigued this preseason. Before we get started, I do want to shout out the other members of the Locked On NBA Draft and No Ceilings team. Both Tyler Rucker and Tyler Metcalf just released an episode of Start Bench Cut with some of the top prospects in the 2026 NBA draft class, and Corey Tullaba and Albert Gim did a scouting report on Kentucky sophomore center Jaden Quaintance. Both episodes are available to watch or listen to wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Maxwell, let's dive in. First and foremost, I think the Houston Rockets are at the top of every NBA fan's mind early on in the preseason process because of the Fred VanVleet injury. It's going to impact the potential title contender in the Western Conference, and there's a hole at the starting point guard position. So the question is, how do you fill that hole? Are we looking at Amen Thompson as a starting point guard, who we talked about last week, rising junior on the Houston Rockets, or are we looking the way of a sophomore in Reed Sheppard, who had a bit of a disappointing rookie season, to say the least, for a number 3 overall pick in the 2024 draft? He only started in 3 games. He played well in those 3 games, averaged almost 20 points per game on 64.3 true shooting. You were looking to his summer league performances. Maybe he can take a leap there, start showing some signs, piecing some things together. He put up the counting numbers in summer league this past run, 23 points per game over two games, 2.5 assists per game. But the turnovers, 4.5 turnovers in 2 games, across 2 games, 4 steals, 1.5 blocks, 36% from the field, 31.8% from 3-point range. And then in the preseason, we're seeing some things put together as far as his scoring inside the arc. He's shooting better in preseason, 37.5% from 3, still turning the ball over a little bit and not necessarily having an impact on the plus minus overall of the team. I think if you're the Houston Rockets, you were going into this preseason, you're looking to get as much out of Reed as a starter, working with the starters and some of the top rotational players as much as possible. If you can win those minutes, that's ideally what you're looking for. The fact that he was a net neutral, the fact that we've had some of the returns that we did from last year, it's looking a little murky, to say the least. So I'm not entirely sure that he is the Rockets' best option at that starting point guard spot. But where are you at, Maxwell, personally on Reed Sheppard? What did you see from him last year? Where do you think he can look to build on as we head into his second NBA season?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned, to be honest.
Okay.
He's a guy. I was a Reed believer. My philosophy at the time was like, this is a class where a lot of guys just have not produced. And there's one guy who's been super productive, and I put him in my top tier of my board. I thought he really had a chance to be an impact player. I think he could be. My line of thinking at the time is that he'd sort of be in like that Mike Conley type of mold. And I don't know if we're going to get there. I think now you're like jumping for joy if he ends up having a Mike Conley style career. I've got some real concerns because even in those great games we talked about last year, I remember at the time we discussed them privately and like I watched them, and I know a lot of people are going to take this the wrong way because I have my small guard reservations very publicly. But the biggest thing I just kept thinking about was like, man, he looks tiny out there. And it really affected him scoring inside the arc. He was sub 40% on twos last season. I think we're seeing a little bit of an improvement there this year, but it does seem like he's still having those issues as a playmaker in tight spaces. I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for him, especially because, and it's not to say that Houston doesn't have interior playmaking, obviously. Like a guy like Ahmed Thompson can get in the paint whenever he wants, make a great decision. A guy like Goon, same thing. But when you look at some of the pieces on this roster, like Jabari Smith and Kevin Durant, these are guys that you ideally want like spotting up and relocating and moving within the offense. And for Reed Sheppard being able to get into the paint and then make those decisions is going to be crucial. So I think that's where the play is really going to have to take a step forward. I ultimately buy the shot a lot. Like I think he has the ring, the dynamism, the pull-up ability. I think the shot is going to be fine. I think it's going to be a matter of how often can he get 2 feet in the paint? When he gets there, can he make a good decision with it? And can he be a threat to score once he's inside the arc? Because right now he just feels a little undersized without, super high level athleticism, and the processing can be, a little behind where you want it to be once he's inside the arc.
You hit the nail on the head with your evaluation in particular, Maxwell. So when he was coming out of college, everyone kind of looked around the room and said, if this dude is truly an outlier shooter, like a dynamic shooter among shooters, then we can make a solid case for him as an above average contributor at the NBA level, which to his credit, he put together one of the most nuclear shooting seasons I think we've ever evaluated. Certainly that I've evaluated in like 15 years of scouting. It was insane what he did. 50% from 3 on very respectable volume. When he got handed the keys at Kentucky during that freshman season, he actually looked really good as a playmaker on the ball. He was able to get to his spots. He was able to make those kick out reads. Didn't necessarily put a ton of pressure on the rim, which was one of our big things we went back and forth about. But when he was asked to finish at the rim, he actually did it at a pretty good percentage. But we're not seeing those results like you talked about come through in NBA action. And it really is the size and the length that's been shown time and time again bothering him on tape. Like when he's going up against guards of similar size, he's getting to where he wants to go. He can finish at those guys. He can make shots over those guys. It's not necessarily that big of a problem, but when someone closes out on him or challenges him around the basket or even around the free throw line area of wing size, of forward size, somebody switches onto him in a pick and roll coverage, it does become a problem. He gets bothered by that length, and it's something that he's going to have to learn how to deal with, even if he's on the floor for the Rockets for 2 reasons. Number one, he's another ball handler who can take pressure off of guys like Kevin Durant, Alper, and Şengün. You want as many guards who could handle the rock as possible on the floor without sacrificing too much of your defense, which, again, to Reed's credit, he challenges guys. He can get bullied a little bit, but he has such quick hands. He pokes the ball free. He takes on those challenges very willingly, and he'll win his fair share of battles because he is such a good defensive playmaker. And then the other reason is to shoot the basketball at a nuclear rate. And listen, if he is truly that level of a shooter and he can hold himself together defensively, like you can find the reasons to put him on the floor. But as you outlined and how we've talked about with guards when we went through our how to evaluate position by position series, you have to be able to do everything, and you have to be able to do it at an above average level. And if you can't, your case is going to start to fall apart quickly because NBA defenses, the way coaches scheme against you, they're too good. If you have a weakness, they will pick it apart. They will run you off the line. They'll challenge you to make shots at the rim. They'll challenge you to be a scorer in the paint, and it can get ugly pretty fast. Now, to Reed's credit, like I talked about in the preseason so far, I've watched all the tape, gone back, I've watched his attempts, watched his turnovers. I think the turnovers in particular are still a good sign, despite the 4 assist to 5 turnover ratio. I think 4 out of the 5 turnovers, it was just a miscommunication between him and the teammates, which is to be expected. He hasn't played a lot with those guys. You need to build that chemistry. There was only one pass where I was really like, oh man, like I bet Reed wants that back. Like that was just a really bad decision. So I think a lot of those turnovers you saw from him, even in the G League, were things that, you know, were very correctable on his part. And I still feel that way with a lot of the turnovers there. So I do think there's more to be had from him from a passing perspective. But yeah, as you laid out, Maxwell, all the scoring stuff inside the arc, I mean, he has to improve or else he's not going to get those minutes from Ime Udoka, because I think Coach Udoka is going to expect a lot more from him in this second season. They're going to give him a fair shot. But if he doesn't, are you... Where would you go if you were the Rockets? Like, how would you handle the point guard position right out of the gate? Are you looking the way of Reed and trying to balance the floor with multiple guards? Or do you just want to say, screw it, let's throw that jumbo lineup out there, let's see what happens?
I mean, you know me, you know I'm going to go jumbo lineup. That's in my heart of hearts, that's what I want. I would love nothing more than like Şengün, Eason, Jabari, Durant, and Ahmed Thompson out there. Like, I want length, I want chaos, athleticism, and feel. Like, that is speaking my language. I would love that lineup. At the same time, though, I want to give Reed the benefit of the doubt, because I do think he is going to be a really great shooter. I do think he brings an extra level of spacing and just like floor, like role security, where like I think he's like just comfortable being that guy and playing off of other people in this lineup. And I just love the idea of being able to bring Eason in off the bench. And I don't mean this as like a knock on Eason, but I think that's a guy that can just like feast on second units. When guys come in and they're a little bit cold and he's ready to just be all up in passing lanes and make plays around the basket and get out and run. And like other veteran players just are not up to doing that on an 82 game basis. Like, I love the idea of Tari Eason coming off the bench. I just don't quite know like how feasible it's going to be. Like, at the end of the day, like, you might just have to play your best 5 guys to start the game. And I think Eason has proven a lot more as an NBA player than Reed Sheppard at this point.
I'm with you. I think the jumbo lineup is absolutely the way to go. But that being said, I do still want to see Reed get 20 to 25 minutes out of the gate pretty consistently, because they have to figure out what they have. And the number 3 overall pick, you have to figure out, is this a guy who we can trust to help us get to where we need to go this season? Or do we need to maybe think about packaging him or somebody else and whatever other assets they have and making a move around the deadline, you know, when they can actually make some of those trades on guys they've signed after that January 15th deadline? They have to know what move they need to make, and you're only going to get there if you play Reed Sheppard enough minutes. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Stephon Castle's upcoming sophomore season and how he can impact the Spurs' chances of winning more games in the Western Conference. Stay tuned. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel, as a sports bettor, how they let me use multiple different sorts of markets to bet on, especially when it comes to the NFL. You have same-game parlays, alternate lines, anytime touchdown scores. Makes it really easy for me to craft a bet slip that gives you the best chance to win big. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I, for one, am trying to manage multiple long-term goals like paying off my car, making a dent in my mortgage, saving up for my wife and I's first dog, as well as a few other improvements around the house. And with Monarch Money, my wife and I can establish a budget and easily strategize around making sure our short-term bills are taken care of without sacrificing our long-term financial goals. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. Thank you for making the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast your first listen of the day. All right, Maxwell, let's shift our conversation to San Antonio to discuss the game of one NBA Rookie of the Year, Stephon Castle. 2024-25 stats. He played in 81 games, so durability. Love to see that from a young player. Almost 15 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 2.2 turnovers, shot 43% from the field, 29 from three, 72 from the free throw line. Hasn't played in a preseason game yet because of an injury at the time of this recording. He is making his debut on October 13th against the Indiana Pacers, so we'll be eager to watch a lot of that tape back. Inefficiency was one of the things that was heavily discussed with him in his rookie season, which, again, he's a rookie guard. Guards in particular, along with big men, can have some of the most trouble, as we've discussed, translating to the NBA right away, just because of the amount of responsibility they've had to take on. And listen, the Spurs threw the kitchen sink at him and wanted to see what he can handle and what he couldn't. He ran 652 pick and rolls, including passes per synergy. I didn't look up the volume in which the number that he ran as a freshman at UConn, but I guarantee that 652 mark blew that out of the water. But 48th percentile in terms of total offense in transition, only rated in the 21st percentile in half-court offense, also per synergy. Look, at the end of the day, Stephon Castle is going to have to be more efficient as a sophomore for this San Antonio Spurs team to take a massive leap. Now, you can go back and you can watch a lot of the tape. You could pick apart some negatives, but you saw a lot of positives, right? He was that bulldozer type of driver that he was in college. I think the Spurs tried to use him in a number of different ways. He worked on the ball. He worked off the ball. He set screens. He was a roll man. He operated out of handoffs, off screens. Like, he was one of the most versatile guards that we had in the NBA's rookie class last year. And I think, Maxwell, that's how you and I and a number of us in No Ceilings pegged him heading into that 2024 NBA draft. He's just had versatility. He was a 6'6" guard, big, strong. Again, you can use him as a screener. He's a plus playmaker. He knows how to play out of pick and roll. Is he going to have to improve as a spot-up shooter heading into this season? Absolutely. But there's so much positive there offensively. And then defensively, he didn't have the type of metrics that you would want to see from him from a defensive playmaking standpoint as a prospect. And he didn't necessarily pop out in that regard as an NBA player in his first season, but just the film, Maxwell, he is so strong, so sturdy. Guys bounce off of him. He plays angles well, and he just knows how to shut down driving lanes and make life difficult for that opposing ball handler, to where I watched the tape and I understand, again, the numbers didn't look the greatest. You never necessarily want to put too much stock into the advanced metrics for a rookie or even like a player in his first 2 years in the NBA. But man, I really think he's due for a sophomore leap, because I buy the pull-up jumper in particular. I think he's going to have an impact inside the arc, at least as a pull-up scorer. We know he can finish around the basket, and just the utility that he gives San Antonio. You can let guys like De'Aaron Fox and even a Dylan Harper command touches. Victor Wembanyama is obviously going to soak up a lion's share of the usage. You can let those guys do their thing, and Stephon Castle can still find other ways to cook for you.
Yeah, I think one of the players I'd kind of compared him to pre-draft was like, can he be souped up Isaac Okoro? And like, Isaac Okoro is a guy that's just like found ways to play minutes on good teams. I guess now he's on the Bulls. You can decide if they're a good team or not. But prior to this, he was on a good team and he played minutes. And like, Castle just has ball skills that Okoro doesn't. Bottom line. And I think if you want to be negative, and I have real reservations about like star outcomes with Castle, just because the jump shot has never been there for him. He has a long way to go as a spot-up player, and given what this roster construction is, you'd imagine he's going to be a spot-up player more this year than last year. If you had told me coming into this year he was going to run 652 pick and rolls, I would have told you this was going to be a disaster. Like, the fact that he was as efficient as he was on that volume on a bad team where teams could really load up on him, and he still was like a really good decision maker and put a ton of pressure on the rim and like finished okay, given all of that. Like that's really impressive for a guy who I always think the value is mostly going to come on the defensive side of the ball, where, like you said, he's going to win that bump battle. He's going to force dribble pickups. He's going to be in the right spots to help, whether it's at the nail or just rotating over because someone gets blown by. Like, he just really knows how to play basketball, and he's really physical. And I think that baseline combined with just like a level of ball skills, there is a future here. I think the level to it just depends on like how well can he adjust to his new surroundings with a guy like De'Aaron Fox there for the whole season this time. A player like Dylan Harper, who has some of the same challenges that he has. Like, there's a real world where stuff gets funky and he kind of ends up being the odd man out from like a minutes perspective that I think are really possible. And for those reasons, like, he has to evolve as a spot up shooter. But at the end of the day, like, I think this is just like a firm win in terms of like where you drafted for him from in that class and like what you're getting out of him already. Like, this is a guy that every NBA team could use.
So one of my favorite comps that was thrown out for him in the pre-draft process was when our own Corey Tulaba was very quick to say this guy could be Jimmy Butler in the NBA. Now, he's not quite as big as Jimmy. He's not that far off in terms of size, especially when you factor in just how strong he is. And he is, you know, that mismatch type of wing who can go at opposing guards and really bully them, especially when you factor in, you know, adding De'Aaron Fox to this team, drafting Dylan Harper. Those are two players who are going to potentially get the other team's best on-ball perimeter defender. And you might not necessarily look to put that guy on Stephon Castle. Castle might be able to take advantage of some of those matchups and really impose his physicality. But Jimmy Butler was another guy who never quite, and still really hasn't throughout his career, brought that spot up equity. But he's been so smart to operate in a number of different ways in the court. At the very least, he's been able to get to that pull-up jumper in the mid-range and really make that a weapon for him, his ability to separate. I think his touch is much better off the bounce. I think his shot just looks better in general off the bounce.
Yep.
I think my main question with that offensive comparison is, do you think he can get there as a ball handler to give himself enough separation on those shots to where you can maybe piece together some of that offensive outcome? Or do you think that's still just, you know, really far away for him?
No, I don't think that's like super far away. Like, I think where he really can swing his fortunes is just by providing like more off-ball value, honestly. But I do think there is a path where, like, maybe if he gets so good on the ball, it doesn't matter, honestly. Like, if he can be on the ball more and more and hit those shots, you're in a really good spot. But last year, 39.8% on pull-up twos, 23.4% on pull-up threes. Like, those are really bad numbers, but the volume is super high. And like, we talk about it all the time, like, volume is a fantastic indicator. Like 128 pull-up twos, 111 pull-up threes. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at for a guy that, again, if you'd said going into the year, that's how many pull-up shots he's going to take, you'd be really worried about what the offensive numbers are going to look like. And you'd be really happy if you found out he won Rookie of the Year doing that. So I do think that is a possibility for him. I think with his power, it's something you see guys just sort of pick up on over time. DeMar DeRozan is like the prime example of this. If guys just find little tricks, ways to use their body and their footwork to generate that little extra bit of space, I don't worry about him not being like the shiftiest guy in the world or having the most dynamic handle. I think he's going to get those openings through his body and his intellect as time goes on. He gets more comfortable on an NBA floor.
If there's one thing you take away from this podcast as the listener, volume as a pre-draft and early NBA indicator, so important. You only get better at basketball by playing more basketball. So if you get more reps, chances are you're going to either see the areas clearly where you need to improve, or you're going to figure out right away what you're not good at and maybe where you should focus some of your other time on some of your other strengths. Volume, key indicator. When we return to the Locked On NBA Draft and No Ceilings podcast, Max and I are going to wrap up the show by touching on the upward trajectories of two wing/forwards in the NBA sophomore class, in Matas Buzelis and Zaccharie Risacher. Stay tuned. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Thread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that can help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggesting the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen's a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat, and the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Thread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That's ONE Peloton.com. All right, welcome back to the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast. Maxwell, we're going to wrap up the show by discussing really quickly, a few quick hits, some of our favorite wing/forward standouts in the NBA sophomore class. You're the Chicago Bulls guy between us on this particular episode. Why don't you walk us through what you're excited to see from Matas Buzelis and why he's on a rising star trajectory heading into his second year?
Look, I loved Matas coming out. He was number 4 on my board. He was one of those guys in every mock draft. We'd have an argument about me having him too high. I got to admit, though, Castle was the guy I was too low on. I'll throw that one out there. But I loved Matas coming in, and I loved him because he was big, he was long, and he knows how to play basketball, and he really competes. I saw it in person in a G League game where he had like 14 rebounds. Just a guy where the motor never really shuts off. He can get up and down the floor. He can get out and run in transition, and he has the length and toughness to guard multiple positions. There's some technique stuff that could always be cleared up, and I want to see him get a lot stronger still. But the fact that he came into the league, shot 36% from 3 on good volume, has the ability to put it on the deck, will compete on the glass, is going to get after it defensively regardless of who's on him. These are all really great traits in a wing that's going to be around the league for a really long time and command value. Like, these are the positive players that you want. I feel like the Bulls took a lot of swings on these athletic, rangy forwards. I think what separates Matas from a lot of them is just that edge to him. Really hard-nosed competitor. Like Castle has some work to do as a spot-up player. His spot-up 3 looks much better than Castle's. It's the driving. He just can't push guys backwards the way a guy like Castle had. He comes unglued a lot of the time when he's met with contact. He's got to play with a little bit more bend, hold that line a little better, keep getting stronger. I think he can do that. He's filled out, more and more since his career has gone on. I'm optimistic that he can continue to do that. Always been kind of a streaky shooter, so I'm hoping we don't see any regression there. But I think the fact that you've got a guy who looks like a dribble, pass, shoot player at 6'9", who's going to really compete every night, like the Bulls got to win with that pick at 12.
So 2024 NBA draft process from preseason all the way through the end. I had the same 3 guys the entire time. It was just rearranging them. It was Alex Sarr, it was Stephon Castle, and it was Matas Buzelis. And listen, time will tell whether I'm right about all 3 of those guys, whether I'm wrong about all 3 of those guys. I feel pretty good right now where I'm sitting, especially when you consider, Maxwell, what Buzelis is already doing in this 2025 preseason. He's in the 83rd percentile in terms of total offense per synergy, 55% from the field, 37.5% on all of his jump shots, and 41.7% on catch and shoot threes. Like, when you talk about you wanted to see some of the post All-Star shooting from last year really carry over, 36% from 3, 83% from the line, we're seeing it, baby. Like, this is the Matas Buzelis that we wanted to see, one of the most aggressive 6'10" scoring forwards that we're going to have in the NBA this upcoming season. I think he's going to be one of the best sophomores in the class. I think he's going to have an argument for most improved player. If the Bulls end up being better than just the mediocre Bulls that we're expecting heading into the season, he's going to have a lot of people looking his way in terms of that most improved player award. And I know that we can have some squirrels and quibbles about whether you give that to a second-year player or a third-year player. Is that the spirit of the award? I don't even know what the award is anymore, to be entirely honest with you. Like, the criteria has changed so much in between what voters look for and what they don't. So I'm going to say here Buzelis is on an early shortlist for that award. Another guy who's looking to make a leap heading into his sophomore season, who I've been thoroughly impressed by watching in the preseason, is Zaccharie Risacher. He was the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 draft for the Atlanta Hawks. And a lot of people had questions about, is this the type of guy you target with the first overall pick if you don't necessarily see him as this primary do-it-all offensive option? And I said this to you off air, but I think a lot of the criticisms that Zaccharie Risacher faced in last year's 2024 draft, Ace Bailey faced on the court in the 2025 draft. And sometimes we overthink it as scouts. I definitely overthought Risacher because I didn't have him in that top 5 grouping at the end of the process on my big board. But a 6'10" guy who can legitimately shoot it from 3-point range, who is a dynamic athlete. I certainly underrated his athleticism heading into the draft.
Yep.
I didn't get to see him in person. He was an overseas prospect, which again, when we talk about scouting, if you can get out in person to watch these guys, please do it. It can legitimately swing your evaluations. I've heard that from plenty of NBA scouts, guys that we talk to all the time. Please do it. But again, dynamic athlete, 6'10", legitimate shooter, has defensive versatility, post all-star, put up almost 15 points per game, 4 rebounds, 50% from the field, 41% from 3-point range. I mean, those are very, very legitimate statistics for a wing who he's not expected to be the Hawks' first option, not their second option, but if he can slot in as their third scoring option behind Trae Young and Jalen Johnson, now all of a sudden we're cooking, and we have this jumbo-sized team around Trae that can cover a lot of his defensive miscues and offer him versatile options away from the basketball, both in terms of catch and shoot equity from the corners or lifting up to the wings. You can play either one of those forwards, both Jalen Johnson and Zaccharie Risacher out of the dunker spot. They offer lob options to Trae now that they have Kristaps Porzingis in the mix, who's primarily a short roller pick and pop threat behind the arc. There's a lot of versatility that you're going to be able to unlock with this Hawks offense because Risacher is so good. Where did you end up finishing with Risacher in your 24 draft?
Too low.
Where were you at?
Yeah, had him 7. Like, got to a point where I was more intrigued with some like the older guys that I thought could come in and do stuff right away, like a Devin Carter. And like now it's like, oh boy, I'm sweating that one. So with Risacher, my reservations with him, I still have to a degree. I agree with you on the athleticism. He looks way more athletic than I thought he would. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that was like, I just didn't think the French league in particular like looked like that athletic of a league on tape. Yeah, moving out there better, especially defensively. Just looks like way more coordinated, fluid, and fast on that side of the floor, covering ground better than I thought he would. I'd say that's where I feel worse about him. Shot looked really good. He was always kind of inconsistent as a shooter, so I wondered, like, well, if he's like just, fine defensively, and then the shot comes and goes, and he's, lacking ball skills, like this guy might not be anything, which is where I got concerned with him. Where I thought he was quite a bit better is he's still like a pretty poor driver. Like I think as a spot up 2-point shooter, he graded out quite poorly. And it's a lot of the same issues that Matas has. I think he's got a little less sauce than Matas. But I also just think it's part physical, it's bend, it's a lot of that stuff. But in general, like he didn't run a lot of ball screens, but in the ones that he ran, I thought his decision-making was like quite a bit better than I anticipated it to be. And I know he's like, you're gonna look at the numbers and say like a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, but like, I thought he was a disaster when he had to make decisions on the go in France. And he looked quite a bit better in that respect throughout his rookie season. And that is the thing that makes me raise my eyebrows a little bit. Cause it's like, okay, well, if you're moving better defensively and the shots, pretty good, but you take a lot of them. And then like, you can actually make decisions like, oh crap. Like I whiffed on a dribble pass shoot wing who's 6'9" and has tools. Like that's where it gets, real scary for every other team in the Eastern Conference.
And I'm glad he brought up decision-making as we wrap up the show, because there's more to decision-making than just the general on-ball, like I have to make this next passing read. It's also how you position yourself away from the ball. How do you time your cuts? How do you time your rotations? Are you thinking about things too much to where you can tell on the tape, like he just needs to let go a little bit and let loose? Or are you making some of those quick reads and you're able to operate a lot quicker when you're slipping to the basket, cutting, all those different types of things? I'm seeing that from Risacher this preseason, and I didn't mention it for Buzelis, but I'm also seeing it from him as well. And I think it's a big time thing, especially when you're not expecting these guys to pop in terms of, usage, on-ball usage rate, how they operate away from the basketball. Do they understand what's going on around them, and can they make those quick decisions to better position themselves as play finishers? I'm seeing both take massive leaps in that regard. One final name before we wrap up here. I got to throw out Kel'el Ware for the Miami Heat because, as Brian Windhorst would say, holy Moses, Maxwell. This guy, 20 points per game, 11 rebounds in 4 preseason outings already, 52.5 from the field, 50% from 3. He's hitting star shots. He's creating looks for himself offensively, the post game, the driving game. He looks reminiscent offensively of a young Joel Embiid out there. And I don't say that lightly. I very much mean it. Like, this guy is on trajectory to become an offensive star at the center position in the NBA. How's it going to work out defensively and his overall two-way impact? Time's going to tell. But Kel'el Ware, keep an eye out for him in the NBA. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, go find Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thank you all for listening to the show. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.